I never thought a single dollar bill could hold so much weight. But there it is, hanging on our living room wall in a simple black frame, right between the window that never quite closes all the way and the bookshelf we assembled drunk on a Tuesday night. That dollar represents everything. The moment we stopped being just two guys splitting rent and became something more. The moment our dreams stopped being separate and started weaving together into something neither of us could have imagined alone. His name is Marcus, and I met him on Craigslist of all places. I know. Everyone told me I was going to end up murdered or robbed or living with someone who collected toenail clippings in mason jars. But I was desperate. My previous living situation had imploded spectacularly when my ex decided our shared apartment would be better suited as his new boyfriend's art studio. So there I was, 26 years old, scrolling through sketchy roommate listings at 2 in the morning, trying not to panic about the fact that I had 3 weeks to find a place. Marcus's post was different. It wasn't trying too hard. Just said he had a 2-bedroom in a decent neighborhood, worked from home doing graphic design, preferred someone quiet and clean, and, oh yeah, LGBTQ friendly. That last part wasn't something everyone bothered to mention, and it made me pause. I sent him a message, expecting nothing, and he responded within an hour. We met for coffee the next day. I remember walking into that coffee shop and scanning the room, trying to figure out which person looked like they might be named Marcus. Then I saw him, sitting in the corner booth, laptop open, wearing this faded blue hoodie and wire-rimmed glasses that kept sliding down his nose. He had this focused expression, like he was solving the world's problems through graphic design, and when he looked up and our eyes met, he smiled. Not a big, flashy smile, but this small, genuine curve of his lips that made his whole face soften. We talked for 2 hours, about everything and nothing. He told me about his work, designing logos and brand identities for startups that usually went nowhere. I told him about my job at the marketing agency, which I hated but needed to pay the bills. We discovered we both loved old science fiction novels, both made terrible coffee at home, but were snobs about the coffee we bought out. Both had complicated relationships with our families that we deflected from with humor. By the end of it, I knew I wanted to live with this person, not just because I needed a room, but because something about him felt safe. Moving in was easy. Marcus had already lived in the apartment for 2 years, so it had his personality stamped all over it. Plants everywhere, even though he admitted he killed about half of them. A ridiculous number of throw pillows on the couch. A kitchen that was surprisingly well stocked with spices I'd never heard of. He helped me carry my boxes up 3 flights of stairs because the elevator was broken, and by the end of it, we were both sweating and laughing, and I felt more at home than I had in years. The first few months were exactly what you'd expect. We established routines. He was a morning person, up at 6, to make elaborate breakfasts, while I stumbled out of my room at 8:30 looking like death. I did the dishes because he cooked. He took out the trash because I cleaned the bathroom. We watched movies on Friday nights, taking turns picking. We existed in this comfortable parallel, 2 separate lives happening in the same space. But somewhere in there, things started shifting. I'd catch myself noticing little things about him. The way he bit his lower lip when he was concentrating on a design. The sound of his laugh, which was way louder than you'd expect from someone so quiet. How he always made enough coffee for both of us, even though he knew I'd drink mine cold an hour later because I'd gotten distracted. The way he'd leave post-it notes around the apartment with terrible puns that made me groan and smile at the same time. I tried not to read into it. Marcus was my roommate, my friend. He was good-looking, sure, but lots of people are good-looking. That didn't mean anything. I'd just gotten out of a relationship. I was not about to complicate my living situation by developing feelings for someone I saw every single day. That would be stupid, catastrophically stupid, except I was already in too deep, and I didn't even realize it yet. The dollar bill thing started because of a joke. Marcus had been complaining about his work, about how he was tired of designing for other people's visions. He wanted to create something of his own, but he didn't know what. I'd been feeling the same way about my job, going through the motions, writing copy for products I didn't care about, making other people's businesses successful while feeling completely empty. We were sitting on the couch one night, half watching some documentary neither of us was paying attention to, when I said, "What if we just did something together? Started something?" I didn't even know what I meant. It was just words filling the space. But Marcus turned to look at me, and there was this spark in his eyes. Like what? I don't know. You're the visual person. I'm the words person. There has to be something in that. We stayed up until 4 in the morning that night, throwing ideas around. Most of them were terrible. A blog about houseplants, a YouTube channel reviewing local coffee shops, a service that wrote custom birthday cards for people who were bad at emotions. But then, Marcus said something about how hard it was to find good design resources for small businesses, and I mentioned how many small business owners I knew who had no idea how to talk about what they did, and suddenly we were onto something. We decided to create templates, design and copy packages that small businesses could actually afford. Marcus would create the visual templates, the logos, the brand guidelines. I'd write the copy frameworks, the website text, the social media strategies. We'd sell them as downloadable packages. It wasn't revolutionary, but it felt possible. It felt like ours. The next few weeks were a blur. We both kept our day jobs, but every spare moment went into this project. Our apartment transformed into a workspace. Marcus's design files spread across the coffee table. My notebooks and laptop took over the kitchen counter. We'd work across from each other, occasionally reading things aloud, asking for feedback, falling into this rhythm that felt effortless. I loved watching him work, the way his brow furrowed when something wasn't quite right, how he'd lean back and stretch his arms over his head, and I'd try not to notice the strip of skin that showed when his shirt rode up, the satisfied little noise he'd make when a design finally clicked into place. I was so gone for him, and I kept telling myself it didn't matter because this, what we were building together, was more important than my inconvenient feelings. It took us 6 weeks to create our first package, a complete brand identity kit for wellness businesses. Marcus's designs were clean and calming, all soft colors and flowing lines. My copy was warm and inviting, hitting that balance between professional and approachable. We looked at it together on his laptop, sitting close enough that I could smell his shampoo, and I felt this surge of pride. We'd made something real. Now we just have to sell it, Marcus said, and I heard the nervousness in his voice. We set up a simple website, priced the package at $47 because some article said prices ending in 7 converted better, posted about it on every social media platform we could think of. Then we waited. Nothing happened for 3 days, then a week. I was starting to feel that familiar disappointment, that sense that we'd gotten excited about something that was going to go nowhere, when Marcus's phone pinged. He looked at it, and his face went completely still. "What?" I asked. "We got a sale." I grabbed his phone. There it was. An order confirmation. Someone in Portland had bought our package. $47. Minus the platform fees, we'd made about $40, $20 each. It wasn't much. It was basically nothing. But it was everything. Marcus looked at me, and his smile was so wide, so genuine, so full of joy that I felt something crack open in my chest. Without thinking, I hugged him, just reached over and pulled him into this tight embrace, and he hugged me back, laughing into my shoulder, and for a moment, everything else fell away. When we pulled apart, there was this charged silence. We were still close, closer than we usually were, and I could see the flecks of gold in his brown eyes behind his glasses. I should have moved back, created distance. Instead, I stayed frozen, caught in this moment that felt suspended outside of time. "We should celebrate," Marcus said softly, and the spell broke. We went to the bodega on the corner and bought the cheapest bottle of champagne they had, drank it out of coffee mugs because neither of us owned proper glasses, toasted to our first sale, to more sales to come, to partnership. The champagne was terrible and perfect, and I was drunk on more than just alcohol. I was drunk on possibility, on this thing we'd created together, on the way Marcus kept looking at me like I was someone worth celebrating with. The next morning, I woke up to find Marcus in the kitchen, humming to himself while making pancakes. When I shuffled in, he pointed to the counter. There was a dollar bill sitting there, crisp and new. "What's this?" I asked. "I went to the bank yesterday and got 2 brand new dollar bills," he said, flipping a pancake with more confidence than the slightly burnt smell suggested he should have. "One for each of us, to represent our first sale. I thought we could keep them, as a reminder." I picked up the dollar bill, feeling the stiff paper between my fingers. It was such a Marcus thing to do. Sentimental and thoughtful, and exactly the kind of gesture that made my feelings for him even more complicated. "I love it," I said, and I meant it. I put my dollar in my wallet, tucked behind my credit cards where I'd see it every time I opened it. I assumed Marcus did something similar. I didn't think about it again until 2 weeks later when I came home from work to find him standing on a chair in the living room, hammer in hand, hanging something on the wall. "What are you doing?" I asked, dropping my bag. He climbed down and stepped back, gesturing at the wall. "I framed them, both dollars. I hope that's okay. I just thought they should be together." I stared at the frame. It was simple, black wood, and inside were our $2 bills side by side. He'd even added a little plaque at the bottom that said, "First sale, May 15th. Something in my throat went tight. "You framed them together." "Yeah, I mean, we earned them together. Didn't seem right to keep them separate." He was watching me nervously, like he wasn't sure if he'd overstepped. I couldn't explain to him what it meant, seeing those dollars together like that, how it felt like a statement, how it made this thing between us feel more real, more permanent, how it terrified and thrilled me in equal measure. "It's perfect," I managed to say. Our business grew slowly but steadily. We added more packages, different industries, different styles. Each sale felt like validation. We were doing something that mattered, that helped people. That was ours. We fell into this partnership that felt seamless. Marcus would send me designs, and I'd know instinctively what copy they needed. I'd write something, and he'd create visuals that elevated it beyond what I'd imagined. But working together so closely also meant I couldn't escape my feelings. Every late night, working side by side, every small celebration when we hit a new milestone, every inside joke that developed, every shared meal, every moment of comfortable silence. I was falling deeper, and I had no idea if he felt anything beyond friendship and business partnership. There were moments that made me wonder. The way his hand would linger on my shoulder when he leaned over to look at my laptop. How he always saved me the last cookie, the good corner piece of brownies, the first cup of coffee from a fresh pot. The time I was sick, and he spent the whole day taking care of me, bringing me soup and tea, and sitting on the edge of my bed, reading to me, because I was too miserable to focus on anything myself. But maybe that was just who Marcus was, kind and thoughtful and caring. Maybe I was reading into things because I wanted them to mean more than they did. 6 months after we hung that framed dollar on the wall, we hit a milestone, 1,000 sales. We'd made actual money, not quit your day job money, but enough to matter, enough to prove this wasn't just a fluke. We were sitting on the couch, looking at the numbers on Marcus's laptop, and I felt overwhelmed with gratitude and affection and fear. "We did it," Marcus said, and his voice was full of wonder. "We did it," I echoed. He closed the laptop and turned to me. "I need to tell you something." My heart stopped. This was it. He was going to tell me he was seeing someone, or that he'd gotten a job offer somewhere else, or that he wanted to move out, something that would end this perfect bubble we'd been living in. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I think I'm in love with you." The words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding them in for so long they'd finally burst free. "I know that's probably not what you want to hear. I know it complicates everything. Our living situation, our business, our friendship, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel this way. Every time I look at that dollar bill frame, I think about how much I love building something with you, how much I love just existing in the same space as you, how you're the first person I want to talk to when something good happens, and the only person I want around when things are bad." I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only stare at him, at this person who'd become the center of my world without me quite realizing when it had happened. "Say something," Marcus whispered, and I could hear the fear in his voice. "Please." "I'm in love with you too," I said, and it felt like jumping off a cliff. "I have been for months. I just didn't think you felt the same way." The smile that broke across his face was like sunrise. "Really? Really?" He kissed me then, soft and tentative at first, like he couldn't quite believe this was happening. Then deeper, more certain, his hand coming up to cup my face. I kissed him back, pouring months of longing and hope and fear into it, and when we finally pulled apart, we were both breathless and grinning like idiots. "That dollar bill," I said, "you framed them together on purpose, didn't you?" Marcus laughed, ducking his head. "Maybe. I thought if I couldn't tell you how I felt with words, I could at least show you with actions, that we belonged together." That was 8 months ago. We're still roommates, but now we share the bigger bedroom. We're still business partners, and the company keeps growing. We've added team members, expanded our offerings, started getting featured in small business publications. But more than any of that, we're together. Partners in every sense of the word. The framed dollar bill is still on the wall. Sometimes I catch Marcus looking at it with this soft expression, and I know he's thinking about everything it represents. Not just our first sale, but the beginning of us. The moment when two separate lives started becoming one shared story. Last week, we made our 10,000th sale. We celebrated with expensive champagne this time, drunk from actual champagne flutes we'd bought like real adults. But before we opened the bottle, Marcus handed me something. A small frame, just like the first one, with two more dollar bills inside. From sale number 10,000, he explained. I thought we could start a tradition, mark the big milestones, watch our wall fill up with all the moments that mattered. I kissed him, soft and sweet, tasting the future on his lips. I love you. I love you too. The frames hang side by side now. 2 moments, 2 milestones, a visual representation of how far we've come. But that first one, those first $2 earned together, will always mean the most. They represent the moment when everything changed, when we stopped being just two guys sharing space and became partners, when we took a chance on something we built together and discovered we were building so much more than just a business. Sometimes love happens in grand gestures and dramatic moments, but sometimes it happens in the quiet spaces between, in late-night work sessions and shared coffee, and the decision to frame $2 bills together because some things just belong side by side. In taking a leap of faith on a partnership that became everything. Every time I look at that frame, I remember the nervousness, the hope, the joy of that first sale. But more than that, I remember choosing to build something with Marcus. And in building a business together, we built a life. We built us. And that, more than any amount of money we'll ever make, is worth framing.